Arise, my servants. Sweep over Hyrule. Eliminate this kingdom and her allies. Leave no survivors!
Holy sh... Ever since the most recent Tears of the Kingdom trailer, I have felt overwhelmed, to say the least. The sheer amount of stuff thrown our way when compared to past teasers and footage makes this feel like our first true look at Tears of the Kingdom. And even then, Nintendo continues with being as vague as possible for the sake of ambiguity. As always, I have chosen to start with a basic analysis of the trailer, though if there are any topics in particular you wish for me to later dive into, feel free to let me know in the comments. With that said, this is my analysis of the February 2023 trailer of The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. As per usual, the tone of this trailer is immediately set with the first few shots, as we see several parts of Hyrule plagued by a storm. But something's not right. Almost as if this storm isn't a natural occurrence, with lightning frequently striking the surface in a violent manner. Perhaps it's due to Ganondorf's awakening. The first of these series of shots isn't that noteworthy. It's looking up at the sky, so we don't know where it's being captured from. However, the sudden flash of light does reveal what may be a floating island. And the next shot appears to be somewhere in Hyrule Field. Death Mountain is visible in the background, Malice coming from the crater, which we've already seen in past trailers. And speaking of past trailers, a detail which many pointed out in the teaser featuring the murals comes from one of the last shots. On the ground was an oddly shaped structure that looked as if it had a green spiraling energy coming out from the top. Something that's all but confirmed in this trailer, as this shot shows not one, not two, but 3 locations which match with what was previously shown. And while it's too dark to make out the rest of the structure, other scenes will give us a much clearer look later on. The third location shown is likely the Woodland Tower section of Hyrule, given all the towering wood structures. This place is taken directly behind Hyrule Castle, meaning that this bit might be the rocks surrounding the Great Hyrule Forest portion, where the Lost Woods and Korok Forest reside. Another floating island is revealed with a flash of lightning at the top left of the screen, along with our 4th green spiraling structure to the bottom right. From now on, I'm going to call these things shrines just for the sake of simplicity. This shot also gives us a look at our first new enemy of the game, which has a rather unique look to it, with bat-like wings, or one could even compare it to a dragon. Seeing this, I immediately thought of the flying creature in the background of this scene taken from the previous trailer, and when you compare their body shapes, they're pretty much identical. Given the slight difference in color, it may also suggest that, like the Keese, Choo-Choos, and Lizalfos, there will be different elemental versions of this enemy, which may or may not be a new take on the Kargaroks often seen in Zelda. Though visually speaking, they are very different. The one we see in this trailer may even be an electric-based one. There's also a few bokoblins stationed here, but nothing too noteworthy. The 4th and final shot of this storm is of another location, and while I don't know where exactly it's taken from, the flash of lightning does reveal to us that same storm featured on the key art. 2 things worth noting here. 1, is this the source of all the rain and thunder present in the first few trailer shots? And 2, it confirms that this vortex cloud is over the Hebra region. Notice how you can get a glimpse of the mountain in the background, and the hole cut into it. But the first thing anyone would have noticed in this shot are the 2 towers illuminated by spotlights. Perhaps these will serve a similar purpose to the Sheikah Towers? In the last trailer, there was this oddly shaped structure on Hyrule's surface, so I'm willing to bet that these are that very same tower. And once again, we have yet another detail from this past teaser that's worth bringing up here. These odd engravings into the ground that glow a greenish color are found all throughout the 2023 trailer, with the first example being in this shot. After that, it cuts to a close-up of one of the sides of the floating islands, looking downward. I believe that this spot is the Giza crater, and the fact that there is a chasm to the left of it reinforces this idea. As a matter of fact, this location is very close to Rito Village, however I don't think it's visible from this point of view. A second design can be found to the bottom right of the shot, and my first thoughts were that it was a picture of some sort of temple or building. It might even be the same marking seen in the previous shot, although it is hard to say. Directly under the floating island is a lone block suspended into the air with what may be a light of sorts. Plus, there's a fairly big structure directly above the Giza crater. I'm not sure if this is a floating island though, it might just be elevated off the ground. But this is where things get really interesting, as the next shot appears to take us into some sort of underground cavern, where 3 to 4 Lizalfos, as well as a bokoblin mining ore are found. While there are trees here, notice how the sound of stone hitting ore reverberates through the air. Almost as if it's in a giant cave. And in the background, numerous stalactites are shown hanging from the ceiling. For those who don't know what stalactites are, think of them as icicles but made of rocks. In the real world, these sort of things form naturally in cave systems. The fact that you can also see mushrooms growing, as well as oddly shaped trees, suggests that wherever this is, it's far away from sunlight. Something interesting about the enemies is the malice emanating from their bodies. Could this be a new tier of enemy, or even be a malice type, with attacks that utilize malice? The rock itself has odd circular patterns on it, and I do wonder if the ore they're mining is story-related or simply there to give these creatures more personality, just like how in Breath of the Wild you see them hunt, dance around the fire, and eat food. The bokoblin mining also has very basic mining equipment, since it's just a stone attached to a stick, as well as what I assume is a backpack. One tree in particular is rather strange since it has a bulging green spot that glows, with another located further back. And there appears to be one man-made structure in this cave system made of stone, but it's very oddly shaped and I don't know what it's supposed to be. What excited me most about this shot is the fact that it suggests there will be plenty of underground exploration in this game, which is the one thing I've been hoping for ever since the first teaser. The fact that that one had plenty of man-made structures such as the walls and the Zonai-esque bridge meant that perhaps there was some sort of civilization that lived beneath Hyrule's surface, and that we'll be exploring that along with the Sky Islands and Tears of the Kingdom. But another detail that's very interesting comes from the right side. A group of wisp-like flames are floating above the ground, and they look almost identical to the ones from Breath of the Wild's spirits, specifically the Champions and King of Hyrule. There's also a potential link to the Luminous Stones and how they're rumored to get their pale blue glow from the souls of the dead, assuming that the rocks we see in the cavern of the first trailer are Luminous Stones. Another detail worth noting is how in Twilight Princess, those who are trapped within the Twilight appear as flames. So could this hint at some sort of dark world for Tears of the Kingdom? I mean, the oddly designed trees would make more sense if this were the case. However, if there's one thing that I consider to be the highlight of this trailer, it has to be the following shot. Because on the right side of the Bridge of Hylia is a giant freaking dragon. And no, I'm not talking about Farosh, I mean a dragon. A good old classic fire-breathing dragon you'd see in any other fantasy setting. Not only that, but it also has 3 heads, accompanied with what I assume is fiery hair. It's plausible that this is meant to be this game's version of Gleeok, a 3-headed dragon which appears in other titles. But this one also has wings, so does that mean that it's capable of flying around and attacking Link while airborne? Is this one of many mini-bosses that will be seen in Tears of the Kingdom's overworld? Either way, I'm very excited. Though, aside from that, nothing else really sticks out. And before you ask, I will be very briefly talking about the voiceover lines, just not right now. As per usual, we get a glimpse of both Hyrule Castle and Death Mountain, the former having a greenish glow beneath it, which I assume is another one of those shrines. Next is a brief shot of Hateno Village. You can clearly see the tech lab on the left, however there's another one of those shrines around the spot you'd normally find a Sheikah shrine. So, similar to how I believe these towers will replace the towers of the first game, will these structures serve a similar purpose to the shrines? Or at the very least act as fast travel points? It might also serve a completely different purpose, like letting Link travel to the Sky Islands or even underground. Parts of the village may also be on fire, though it's kind of hard to tell because YouTube compression sucks. However, one interesting detail is found in the background of the scene, a blue vertical line, almost resembling a Sheikah tower when activated. Could it actually be one of those previous towers, and mean that they too have an activated sort of state? Possibly. Followed up is a shot of one of Breath of the Wild's Blood Moons, including this super detailed close-up shot. The first one gives us another glimpse at some floating islands, and I feel like the more trailers we get, the more bizarre looking some of these structures look. Some of them feel like normal landmasses elevated into the sky, but a lot of them shown off recently, especially in this trailer, feel way more man-made. And I really like the inclusion of the blood moon in this trailer because it reminds me of something that Zelda says in Breath of the Wild.
Ganon's power grows. It rises to its peak under the hour of the blood moon.
So including the blood moon in this trailer, especially the close-up of it, is a great way to demonstrate just how powerful Ganondorf is. The next shot simply gives us another angle of Hyrule Castle. You can see that the bridge connecting Zelda's room to her study is destroyed, and the side looks like it may be covered in malice or something. This is followed up with what I will refer to as malice missiles, which are very reminiscent of that specific cutscene with Calamity Ganon taking over the Divine Beasts and Guardians. And these are fired onto what I assume is the Great Plateau, given the surroundings. You can see the wall of the plateau there, as well as part of the Gerudo region. Right now, it's unclear what these clumps of malice are, but this question will be answered later. And during this quick camera movement, another one of those shrines can be found. Next, we have an explosion of what I assume is malice, and it appears as if something is inside this explosion. It's possible that this is some sort of new enemy. Either this is the death animation, similar to when the player kills the blights, or the explosion itself is actually malice powering up an enemy before a major boss fight. The body shape of the bottom looks kind of like the legs of a Lynel, but then there are these bits which sort of resemble the legs of Guardians. In fact, what if this enemy is born from an amalgamation of Sheikah parts fused together with the Lynel, a sort of Frankenstein creation that we the player will have to beat? At this point, your guess is as good as mine. The next shot of this trailer shows a giant rock formation crumbling. I assume that this is taking place in Eldin, as visually this rock resembles the magma rock found all throughout Death Mountain. It may even be a giant Igneo-Talus mini-boss. We then cut back to a Blood Moon event, this time circling around the perimeter of the Great Plateau. The Temple of Time is still visible, as well as the water flooding the entrance of the plateau. In the background, you can just barely see another one of those odd patterns in the ground. The next shot is likely taking place at the same time as the previous one. A group of bokoblins are suspended into the air shortly before dropping down on what I assume is the Great Plateau. In fact, we get to see some additional ones spawn in, and remember those malice missiles from one of the past shots? Well, that same thing is seen here. And since that other shot showed the malice being fired onto the plateau, it's probably followed up by this scene where we'll see Ganondorf summon his minions. The malice missiles seem to be the thing that spawns the bokoblins in. I also love this because it further demonstrates just how much malice plays into Ganondorf's power. But that's not all. Immediately after the bokoblins spawn in, we get to see more enemies, including two entirely new ones. The first resembles a bokoblin, but much bigger, kind of like Skyward Sword's moblins, and apparently its name in the Japanese version is Boss Bokoblin. However, from now on, I shall be referring to it as Boss Coblin. Hey, at least it's more original than Boss Bokoblin. Anyways, the inclusion of Boss Coblin is great and all, but once you see this next enemy, at least half of you are going to lose your minds. Because to the right of the Lizalfos is what I can only assume is meant to be this game's version of a Redead, and it looks amazing. I really dig the half-flesh, half-bones appearance of it since it helps sell that decaying corpse sort of feel. Plus, the sideways leech mouth is a nice touch. With that said though, this might just be me, but it looks kind of cute. I'm just saying, I wouldn't mind giving it a hug. Look, Redeads need love too, okay? I mean, usually they're the ones that hug you. Aggressively, I may add, but it's still a hug. Anyways, we see Link riding along Hyrule Field in close proximity to Hyrule Castle, and I gotta say that the malice surrounding the castle looks a lot more dense than I thought it would be. It might even be covering the cave below, where Ganondorf may or may not still be, and one of the main goals of the game is eventually making your way down here for a final confrontation. Next, there is a bird's-eye view of the surface, of what looks like to be a canyon of sorts, and upon closer inspection, it looks like there's a Molduga or Molduga-like enemy scurrying along the ground. In fact, I believe this is a pack or herd of Molduga. If you look closely at the dust clouds, I have a feeling that these are being made by additional Molduga, that you can just barely make out. Fighting one was already quite the challenge, imagine a whole group. Another interesting bit of this trailer comes from the next scene. Link is standing on a platform surrounded by guardian legs which slowly rise from the ground. First off, this is the first time of any trailer that we get to see the architecture that's clearly built by the Sheikah. It has the exact same aesthetic as the divine beasts and shrines. Not only is a Sheikah eye present on the floor, but another one is located on the wall of the following shot. In addition, some Sheikah script is also on the floor, script which translates to transport. For now this won't mean much, but we will be returning to this later on. Another detail worth noting is that one of these guardian legs is holding some sort of object. It reminds me of a spool of wire or string. After this, we get a better look at the new boss Goblin enemy, who blows a horn while some bokoblins lunge forward. Something odd about this is the bit of malice you see on the ground. Now, I'm not 100% certain, but perhaps this means that these bokoblins were just spawned in, and maybe these boss goblins will act similar to Skyward Sword's scout bokoblins. Whenever these enemies used their horns, it spawned in an additional wave of bokoblins, meaning that the only way to kill all the enemies was to defeat the scouts first. What's strange about some of these enemies, though, are the horns. Previously, we've seen bokoblins with longer than usual horns, but in this case, they kind of look like the blades of Lizalfo's spears. The boss goblin itself also has an axe on its head. So, are these purely aesthetic, or are they going to play a role in the attacks? It may have also been included to differentiate the ranking or tier of these enemies. On a more minor note, that same backpack-like object from one of the previous shots is also present on the far right bokoblin. In the background are also some dark stones, which may have originated from the Sky Islands. The following scene plays out similarly to that one bit of an early Twilight Princess build, where Link is chased by a Goma through a narrow passage. Only this time it's a Hinox. The two details worth noting are 1, the orb around his neck, since it might be a replacement for the Sheikah orbs and used in some sort of in-game puzzles, and 2, this is another segment taking place underground, further suggesting that a good portion of explorable bits in Tears of the Kingdom will be caverns. Like most enemies, the Hinox also has something on its head, but aside from that, there's nothing else worth talking about. The trailer cuts to a shot somewhere around the Ridgeland Tower. I tried to pinpoint the exact location, and while I couldn't perfectly match everything up, bits of the trailer such as the foresty area and Satori Mountain also show up in my in-game example, and in the correct places in comparison to the mushroom trees. As always, we get more floating islands, as well as a huge one in the top left, close to the end of this footage. More importantly, the top right gives us a very faint glimpse of a cube-like structure. You'd better get used to these cubes because they'll be appearing in a lot more future shots, and will be relevant later on. Not much to say here, just some horseback riding close to Hyrule Castle. Here's another interesting one, a shot of the new flying enemy carrying bokoblins into battle. One has a new stone axe as a weapon, kind of like the one Link had in the previous teaser, and the way these creatures are brought in from the battlefield is very similar to Wind Waker's Kargaroks. Another comparison comes from Twilight Princess, since Wolf Link uses one of the Shadow Kargaroks to fly around Lanayru, and while I'd love to believe that this could be a form of transportation in Tears of the Kingdom, later footage suggests otherwise. But something else worth mentioning about this shot is where it's taken. It's actually at Thyphlo Ruins, which we can now see is no longer covered by perpetual darkness. The shot is being taken from the upper right of Hyrule, looking to the left of the map. The massive storm cloud above Hebra is visible, along with the top of the North Lome Labyrinth. I don't know if this means Thyphlo will have some relevance to the story, but it will be nice to finally see the location without the darkness. Now's probably a good time to advertise a much older video of mine where we explore this location with a mod that removes said darkness, so if you've ever wondered what the place looks like, you should definitely check it out. The next scene has Link fighting 3 different moblins. But near the end of the shot, there's a faint glimpse of what I believe is an upgraded version of the skull monster base as often seen in the first game. Looking closely, you'll notice one bit which might be the eye of the skull. But things escalate rather quickly, as the trailer thrusts us right into a boss fight against a golem-like enemy, similar to Phantom Hourglass's Eox. This creature is made up of a bunch of cubes, and similar to the E3 2021 robot, is powered by a green energy which flows through it, the very same energy making up the hand holding out Ganondorf and used by Link. But does that mean that it's an enemy, or a guardian of sorts, who tests the hero in a combat-based trial? If so, then what about the one from the 2021 trailer? I've always looked at it as less of an enemy and more so a guardian like Mazal or Godin, but perhaps it's something different. One thing of interest, though, is this cube since it's the only one with a different design, so maybe it's this boss's weak point. Aside from the floating islands, notice how this shot also has that familiar cube shape in the sky. Another in-game screenshot not present in the trailer itself gives us a clearer look at Link and the boss. You can see plenty of floating islands here, but more importantly, look at Link's sword. It's not the Master Sword, yet it also looks to be damaged and or corrupted by malice. Is this going to be Tears of the Kingdom's version of the whole weapon durability system? Instead of breaking, they just get weakened or even destroyed by Ganondorf's malice? Remember how there were those malice-infused enemies in the cavern shot? Maybe fighting against those types of monsters will be what weakens our weapon. Or perhaps the amount of durability a weapon loses will be based on the enemies you're fighting. After that, it cuts to a close-up side view of Ganondorf, his eyes still closed. In the middle of his chest is a clump of malice that strangely looks motionless, although it could be due to his twitchy movements. This is likely the spot the hand was holding down, and now that nothing is there, his malice is able to move freely, allowing him to use his full power. Now, this next bit is strange, and I don't know if this is just me or if anyone else has pointed this out in their analysis videos, but on closer inspection, doesn't the gem on his forehead look cracked? I don't think it was the case for previous trailers, although I could be wrong. However, I do want to quickly fast forward to this in-game screenshot because as the malice goes after Link, you can see the gem on his forehead glowing. And that detail alone makes me feel like this cracked version has some sort of significance to the story, but I'd love to hear your opinions on this detail. Following this, we get a front view of Hyrule Castle, and then it cuts back to Ganondorf who has his arms raised, the platform beneath him looking as if it's falling apart. It's a bit difficult to see, but pieces of the stone appear to be separating from each other, which could be symbolic for the seal that's literally breaking. Assuming that this is the same location as the chamber from the first teaser, it means that this was changed in later versions, which could also be true for other things we see, such as the in-game cutscenes and yes, even the architecture. It then cuts to this close-up of Ganondorf's face, and this shot in particular is very similar to the one from the 2019 teaser, as in both cases, Ganondorf quote-unquote wakes up, the eyes now glowing with that familiar malice eyeball look. Again, the reason both are similar might be because this is that same cutscene, but slightly altered. The rest of this trailer mostly focuses on Link and some new gameplay mechanics, which honestly is all I wanted from this presentation, so to say I'm happy is an understatement. Aside from Zelda's voice lines, there's not much to say about the first shot. Once again, I'll talk a bit more about the voice lines at the end. However, once the camera turns around, there's much more to unpack. First is this huge stream of malice coming from somewhere. It can't be Hyrule Castle since that's in the background, and when you take into account the positioning of the shot, it means that this has to be the malice coming from Death Mountain's volcanic crater. Which is really cool when you think about it because this is the closest we've ever gotten to it. Every other shot of it has always been far away, with it just barely visible in the background. Second detail worth noting is that at the top right, you can see a cube. But now the two questions are, 1, is it the same as the one before? And 2, I saw a really neat theory shared on Twitter by Lurulian Historian, which was pointed out to him by Discord user Chiff the Oblivious. Could these be the Lome Labyrinths now airborne? A second shot not present in the trailer shows Link once again standing on a floating island looking over Hyrule, and to the right is what appears to be the Gerudo Desert region. I think that this landform is actually Spectacle Rock, where Vah Naburis used to be. And high above this area is a cube. Remember that one of the 3 mazes is located around this part, so yes, this could be one of the mazes now risen into the sky. With that said though, remember our previous shot which I concluded was at Thyphlo ruins? You can clearly see Hebra's maze in the background of the shot. Thus, this means one of 3 things. 1, none of these cubes are the mazes. 2, only some of them have risen into the sky. Or 3, this bit of the game takes place during a time where the labyrinths haven't yet gone into the sky. Either way, this is a topic that's definitely worth diving into at a later date. Now, before I go back to the other shot, something else I found rather interesting was how this shot perfectly mirrors our previous footage. Now, this could be me overthinking things, but the fact that both of these show Link in his 2 different quote-unquote outfits for Tears of the Kingdom, I can't help but wonder if there's some sort of deeper meaning here. I know that I've gone on record to say that I don't think these are 2 different Links, but I do wonder if this perfect mirroring of the shots is meant to represent something story-related. Anyways, another one of those towers with the spotlights is visible on the surface of our trailer shot, and once again, many of these floating islands do not look natural in the slightest. Especially this bit, which, while broken up, feels like they are meant to be one quote-unquote tower. Link is then seen skydiving downward, which gives us a look at some more islands as well as another tower, and one detail that's easy to miss are these strange vertical structures. My first thought was perhaps it's streams of malice, however later on we'll get a closer look at them. Following this is a faraway shot of Link running across Hyrule's surface, and in the background you see a close-up of one of those huge patterns carved into the ground. It's the closest we've ever gotten to them, and it gives us a much better look at just how massive they are compared to Link. Now, remember that one shot with Link and the 3 moblins? I have a feeling that the structure on the left is one of those super bases I talked about. In fact, these skulls appear to have horns on the top. The Great Plateau is also visible in the background, along with one tower to the left and possibly here. This next one may just be a trick of the shadow, but this shape resembles one of the horse stables from Breath of the Wild. And once again, we see our good old cube friend chilling in the upper left of the sky. After that, the trailer shows off a new type of homing arrow being fired at the flying monster. It looks like it might be a pouch loaded with something, possibly a bundle of that green energy, which then explodes on impact. And I swear, that cube never goes away. Please just leave me alone for a second? Thank you. Anyways, our next shot is of Link shield surfing on minecart rails. Either this is on some floating island or on a mountain in Eldin given all the minecarts laying around. I'm pretty sure we will still be able to ride along the rail systems with these minecarts, though now we're given the option of simply shield surfing. Aside from the obvious monsters roaming the area, there are 2 objects worth remembering for later. Unfortunately, it also looks like motion control puzzles will be returning. It's not that I despise them per se, but motion controls can be really awkward when playing handheld since, you know, you're rotating the thing that the screen's on. It gives me flashbacks to that one puzzle where you had to count the type of balls in that cube. But there is something hanging from a rope here. Could be a chest, since we've had those types of things in Breath of the Wild. I also want to mention that, again, Link is using his hand to manipulate its movement, just like the Magnesis rune. We actually see a Magnesis-like ability later on. This is followed up with a fight against a Luminous Talus, with what appears to be a new weapon. Just like the Zonai flamethrower, this one also has a dragon head, along with the long cylindrical tube. At first I thought it could be a boar since the tube resembled a snout, but some angles combined with the lighting all but confirm it's another Zonai dragon. One small detail that's easy to miss is, I believe some of that odd new script shows up on the cylinder bit of the weapon. Plus, that same bell symbol from the E3 2021 robot is present on the end of the weapon. More importantly though, this is yet another scene taken in a cave, again suggesting that underground exploration is going to be a thing. 2 other observations include this strange cluster of what looks like luminous stones or ore, it has a very bizarre shape, as well as these stones, which could be pebblet enemies. They tend to be in close proximity to stone taluses. After that, we get what's probably the most cryptic shot of the entire trailer, as it's of a figure reaching out their hand. Everything about the physique screams Zelda, though it might also be Hylia. If what was on the past teaser's murals was a Zonai depiction of Hylia, it could also mean that this figure is related to said person on the mural. Another theory is that it's the princess from the legend 10,000 years ago. One other possible connection comes from the fact that this figure is shining. Zelda does mention that the person from her dreams was haloed in a blinding light. It's hard to talk about this right now as it would lead to heavy speculation. One of the more strange details is actually present in the background. It looks like there are some objects moving. My first guess is that they're rotating, but there's not much to work off of. I assume that this next bit is a close-up of Link's hand given how it matches his own with the inclusion of the bracing, but it's possible that this whole bit was included to purposely mislead us. Assuming that this is Link, he could be reaching out to Zelda, Hylia, or the princess from the 10,000 Year Legend. Perhaps it's even related to the hand holding down Ganondorf, but since he already has the bracing on, it's hard to say. We're now taken back to the Great Plateau and see Link using a Magnesis-like power to lift an object from the mud. In the background, you can see a new type of chest on the tree stump, and it may be the same object we see hanging from the rope. But cut to the next sequence of shots, and this is where things get really interesting. First off, it tells us that the item Link retrieved from the mud was actually the wheel of a car. Yes, a car, as well as an air balloon and flying machine. But let's go over each one individually. As with many things in these trailers, the car has Zonai-esque dragon designs for the front wheels. The main body is made up of some wood, and there are also headlights, which may be powered by luminous stone, although that's just a theory. Link appears to be controlling this vehicle with a steering wheel, and on the middle of these wheels is that familiar bell symbol. This shot is followed up with another contraption. This time Link is on an air balloon. Not much to say about the background, except for this strange debris, which again feels like it's all meant to be one tower. The third and final contraption shown off is a flying machine with 4 propellers. There's also this planet-shaped island which reminds me of the Death Star. Not sure if its shape suggests it to be relevant to the main story, or if it's just like any other floating island. However, this also gives us another view of those weird thin vertical lines. My 2 best guesses are that it's Malice or waterfalls from the islands, but they also appear to not be moving, which is why I'm stumped as to what they are supposed to be. In regards to the flying machine itself, while not entirely visible, the bottom of the propellers might have that bell symbol. But what's by far the most important detail to note is that all of these contraptions, the car, air balloon, and flying machine, seem to be bound together by a green substance. And this suggests that all vehicles we can ride will be fully customizable. Fully customizable as in the possibilities will be endless. And to explain why, let's take a closer look. Notice how it's not just the car's wheels that are bound to the wooden body. The body itself seems to be made up of a variety of wooden planks all fused with this green substance, as well as the steering wheel itself. Now, notice how the flying machine also has that green substance connecting the metal platform and steering wheel. This level of customization extends beyond this game giving us default templates to choose from, and it means that the possibilities for what we can make may be endless, which is really exciting. Now, remember that previous shot with the Guardian arms and the script that translates to transport? A really good theory that originated from Discord user Pikey states that this may be a device that deconstructs and reconstructs the vehicles you make. And I think it's a really good idea, given that the floor says transport. Perhaps it explains why one of these arms is holding a spool of string or wire, although that's my interpretation of it. Now to go back to our shot with Link surfing on the minecart rails. One observation pointed out by Croton on Twitter was the fact that these 2 items are actually the propellers from the flying machine. So it looks like we'll be finding these machine parts in the overworld and can use them to build a variety of contraptions. There may even be some side quests related to getting new parts to use. And this is why I previously said that any sort of flying creature mount would be unlikely. I was hoping that Loftwings would return, but this seems to be the main method of transport we'll be using to navigate Hyrule's land and sky. It does make me wonder though if there will be additional types of transportation, such as digging underground or swimming underwater. Finally, we cut to a scene of Link riding through Hyrule Field by the dueling peaks, with the title eventually setting in. It looks like there's a bunch of Malice or something on the left side, as well as a small encampment nearby. You can even see what may be an NPC by a campfire. Some falling debris from one of the islands is also falling down. I bet we'll be able to use that time reversal mechanic on it to travel upwards, similar to what was seen in the previous Tears of the Kingdom trailer. And in the background, 2 more of these new towers are clearly visible, and something about this rock formation is very odd. Not sure if it's meant to be legs or something. But that's not the end of it. Next we see Link have the Master Sword drawn against Ganondorf, who, while not moving, is looking directly at him. Again, the gem on his forehead is glowing, and I wonder if it will have some significance to the plot. A tendril of stored up malice then erupts from his chest and strikes in Link's direction. Notice how Link is grasping his hand, so his arm has already been damaged. Also, while the Master Sword isn't in the best condition, with malice eating away at the blade, it is still glowing, so it hasn't entirely lost its function, it seems. At the very least, it looks much better than what we see in other shots. It then cuts to Link quickly turning around and jumping down to reach out for Zelda, who's already falling. Now, this happens fairly quickly, but one thing worth noting is how the Master Sword is originally in his hand, but as he turns around, he releases it from his grasp and instead runs to Zelda's aid. Yeah, you heard me correctly. He drops the Master Sword to try and save Zelda. I'm sure the Z-Link shippers are gonna have a field day with this one. Speaking of this last shot, it's likely that this is followed up by the green hand saving Link from the fall, and this shot of Zelda falling into the chasm. You can also see the torch they were carrying around in the 2019 teaser. Last, but certainly not least, is this bit confirming that the game is still releasing this year in May. So that was everything from the trailer. However, now I'm going to go over some of the other stuff which may give us additional clues. Here's a look at the Collector's Edition, which I haven't been able to get. Notice how the bottom part of that mural from the past teaser is visible. The people at the bottom seem to further imply the being above them is a sort of deity. I'd love to say that this could be related to the 6 sages, but since the one at the end is also holding hands, it appears to be simply a recurring pattern. The box also has what may be a version of the Hyrulean Royal Crest, but instead of the Triforce, it features the egg/lotus found on robots and architecture of the E3 2021 trailer. There also was a leak a long time ago about a Tears of the Kingdom themed Switch, in which this same pattern appeared on, so it all but confirms that this is true. Unfortunately, they only show off one of these collector's glass symbols, which does look familiar, but I can't remember where I've seen it. And to literally no one's surprise, they are releasing a Link amiibo with that same pose as the life-size figure. In addition, we get to see 2 pages of this art book that's releasing with the collector's edition. There's also this art that I believe was taken from the website. Notice how the eye is the exact same one found on the giant doors of the previous teaser. However, is this handprint meant to be Ganondorf's, or the hand sealing Ganondorf, or of the figure in the mural? Now I'll show you some concept art for Link, Zelda, and Boss Coblin. Something interesting about Link is that in every shot of the trailer, he only ever has 4 of the 8 vials. I believe this was purposely done to not spoil everything, and thus does not in any way imply all these shots are taken from the beginning of the game. Zelda appears to have a Sheikah slate different from the one in Breath of the Wild. It could mean nothing, but I do hope this means that she'll be playable to some capacity. And the Boss Coblin art just gives us a better look at his appearance. Next, here are some different designs for the gliders, which Nintendo has confirmed will be unlocked via amiibo. Finally, here is a very interesting screenshot never seen in the trailer. First, it confirms that the dragons will be present in the Sky Island portions, and we also have a clear look at what is likely to be the buildings shown off in past trailers. At the top of it is an arena of sorts, as well as plenty of Sky Islands. This one in particular might have rails or a suspension bridge connecting it. The Master Sword can also be seen on Link's back, but this time it's way more damaged. I wonder if we'll still be able to technically use it, perhaps over time we repair it and it makes the weapon stronger in combat. And lastly, the voice lines.
Rise, rise, my servants. Sweep over Hyrule. Eliminate this kingdom and her allies. Leave no survivors!
But Link, I am not sure you'll be able to stop him. Please, lend him your power.
Before I talk a bit about some of the stuff said here, I do really want to know what they say in the Japanese version. We can assume that the first one is Ganondorf, and some have speculated that the "and her allies" part hints at kingdoms outside of Hyrule, but I assume it's just talking about the non-Hylian races. It's been confirmed that Zelda is saying, "lend him your power," and not "lend me your power." Given Zelda's connection to Hylia, she could be communicating with her, or she's talking to the owner of the Green Hand, or that person on the mural. Again, it's up to interpretation given how vague it is. And that's my analysis for the 2023 trailer for Tears of the Kingdom. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed it, then please consider subscribing. I know this video's late, but I wanted to take my time with it and really soak in the trailer. If there are any other topics you want me to discuss, then let me know in the comments. I've been NintendoBlackCrisis, and I'll see you all next time. Oh, and I almost forgot. Apparently someone spotted what may be a Korok flower in the shot here. So, we might have to collect Koroks again. Hooray.